UFC Fight Night. We have Thompson versus Neal. 13 cards on 13 fights, I should say, on this card. This is actually going to be the last card for the year. So let's put you in an opportunity to make some money off of this. Of course, boxing MMA picks. We have Zan, we have Harris. We're here giving you our UFC picks from a betting perspective. Hopefully, we can help you guys make some money, make some good decisions with the betting, help you with which fights to avoid, and hopefully we all walk away happy. So let's get right into the undercard. We have a pretty interesting undercard, or preliminary card, I should say. The main fight of that preliminary card is Anthony Pettis versus Alex Morono. But before we get to that fight, of course, we have 6 fights to get to first. We're going to go right into fight number 1. We have Carlton minus versus Christos Giagos. Now, this is one that was, first of all, it's at a catch weight and 155 pounds, if I'm not mistaken. And this is a last-minute opponent. So what can you tell me about Christos Giagos, and what can you tell me about this fight and Carlton minus's chances?
All right, so like you said, this is a short notice fight. So this fight just was made, today? So, so Carlton minus, what you're getting out of him, you're going to get a boxing first. You throw some kicks. He's not into the grappling. Giagos, very well rounded. He has the grappling. He has some striking. I think this is a clear victory for Giagos. I think Giagos, the only issue obviously is Minus has been preparing for Rick Glenn, and Giagos is getting a short call-up, but obviously he's ready to go. So I like Giagos in this position here. Make it simple, make it quick here. Better grappler, stronger fighter. The striking is going to be real close. Minus might be the striker, but I still have Giagos slightly as a better striker. But I think it's the overall game of Giagos that's going to win him the fight here. He can take this to the ground. He has good cardio. So Giagos is my pick here, and I'm pretty confident Giagos is going to get this done.
And a quick additional note, I'll mention that in terms of the stand-up, Minus might have better stand-up, but one thing I noticed about Minus that I did not like at all, that stance is way too open. He keeps himself open, defensively, doesn't really move the head enough. And, to your point, I can see Giagos taking advantage of that in addition to the other advantages that he has in this fight. So I'm with you on this one. Christos Giagos, yes, it is a short notice fight for him, but we have to assume he will be ready, and that is going to be our pick for fight number 1. Let's move on to fight number 2. In that case, we have Jimmy Flick versus Cody Durden. Now, this is a fight that was supposed to happen, I think, 3 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken. This is in the 125-pound flyweight division. Both fighters pretty much match up physically in very similar ways. This one's going to be interesting, though. This is going to be very interesting because I think we see similar strengths with these fighters, similar sort of approaches to the game. When I look at Flick, I think about that sort of boxing wrestling combo. I mean, I'm not calling him Khabib by any means, but definitely has that boxing wrestling combo. I noticed that he's pretty active. He's pretty aggressive in that wrestling approach. He'll shoot for the takedown. We know he has 13 wins via submission at this point. A lot of body locks, a lot of changing position. He's willing to get tangled up on the ground as well, whether it's on the back or on top. In terms of that stand-up, again, I mentioned that boxing wrestling combo. I mean, the boxing is pretty basic for what it is. Doesn't move the head much from what I noticed. And he'll kind of use just enough stand-up before he attempts that takedown, right? Definitely willing to clinch, willing to work on the cage, dirty boxing, those different types of things as well. With Cody Durden, I mean, again, I think, a ground-heavy game for the most part. But the difference with his stand-up is that I noticed that he likes to sort of chop that calf kick from time to time. And his takedown approach almost specifically is a single leg type of approach. I like the way he shoots in. I like the way he chain wrestles. Like I said, I mean, this is sort of a rare occurrence of wrestler versus wrestler. We know that sometimes leads to this fight staying on the feet. I'm having a hard time picking a winner with this. If I can think about, again, just both of these style of fighters, I feel like Flick maybe has the better wrestling overall. But I do see Durden as having the advantage in the striking. And again, a wrestler versus a wrestler could turn into a striking match. So I can see you making a case for either fighter in this one. But I'm gonna slightly go with Jimmy Flick on this one.
Jimmy Flick. Yeah, he's slick. Jimmy Flick's real slick. He's I'm not sure. I don't believe he's the better wrestler in this fight. I think he has far superior jiu-jitsu. I think he's very tricky with the submissions. I actually like Cody Durden in this fight. I think he's the better wrestler, the better striker. I think he has to be careful with Jimmy Flick in his guard. That's where Jimmy Flick really gets his work done. I don't think Jimmy Flick has knocked out anyone. So Durden's definitely more of a threat in the stand-up area. In my opinion, he's definitely the better wrestler. He's gonna have the size, so I can see him taking Flick down. I see Tapology is heavy on Flick, but yeah, I'm gonna go with the underdog. I'm gonna take Flick. I'm gonna take Cody Durden. I think he's gonna use his size. He's gonna get the takedowns. If it stays standing, he's gonna piece him up. I know in his last fight against Gutierrez, it appeared like he gasped, but that could be more of a leg injury because his leg was torn up from the leg kicks. But this is a different fight. So yeah, I like Cody Durden here to wrestle Flick, and if Flick, if this stays standing, two grapplers, if this stays standing, because this is a grappler fight, you got to go with Cody Durden as a better stand-up fighter. I don't rate Flick's stand-up. I think it's a bit amateurish. And I think Cody will shine if this does stay standing. But again, I think Cody has two ways to win: standing up, winning a decision, winning by knockout, or even utilizing his wrestling and just winning rounds, just staying out of danger. I think he's going to have the dominant positions and when they grapple. But again, Flick is very dangerous from his back, so he's very, very he can do something from there. But I'm betting on Cody avoiding the danger, staying in dominant positions to win the rounds here. At least 2 out of 3.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And I think, Durden maybe has more paths to victory. I think that cardio point that you brought up in Cody Durden's last fight versus Gutierrez, that's going to be a very big X factor, I suppose, in the back of the mind, because we know the pace that Flick can push, right? So I think the final messaging that the listeners should get here is that this is a close one. I'm not mad in either direction. And then you can see the odds even reflect that. I think Durden is the plus 130 underdog, Flick at the minus 155 favorite. Not mad at calling an underdog on that one. Again, I'm going to go with Flick. I know, Zan, you're going to go with Cody Durden. So this is our first split decision of the card, but that's okay. I mean, that's why we're here. Let's go on to fight number 3. Fight number 3, we have Tafon Nchukwi versus Jamie Pickett. Now, one thing that's important to note here is that Nchukwi is coming down in weight. Definitely the bigger fighter. I mean, he's a light heavyweight, very much fills that light heavyweight 205 weight class, and now he's coming down to 185. Both fighters are from Dana White Contender Series, so I know how we both feel a little weary of Contender Series type of fighters when it comes to betting on them, but nonetheless, when they're both Contender Series, let's just kind of analyze these fighters for who they are. So when I think about Nchukwi, I think about him being a southpaw. I think about him being able to switch stance. I like his boxing style. I think he has some pretty good boxing movement. The head movement, distance control, getting out of the way of punches. I also noticed that he will mix in some of those kicks sporadically. He does have a kickboxing background. He is a kickboxing world champion, 13-1 as a Muay Thai fighter as well. Going back to his boxing, I really like his jab straight, his 1-2, especially out of that southpaw position. So that's something that I'm going to be really keeping an eye on in this fight for sure. And what I do like, especially about him, and especially in the UFC, because we don't see enough fighters do this, he will go to the body a healthy amount of times, whether it's at distance with that jab or whether he's in range and he's throwing hooks at your body. Again, I spoke about his striking defense. I like it. I think he's a pretty decent counter puncher. He'll definitely put punches and combinations. And he's more of the fighter that's likely to control the center of the octagon, I would say. When I think about Jamie Pickett, contrasting his style, bit more of a leg heavy attack in that sort of boxing kickboxing style, a little bit more of the leg kicks, a little bit more active with that. I think he does have pretty sharp looking hands as well. And I think he also uses his range, and he'll definitely close that range quickly, coming in with the jab straight. I like that he has some pretty decent takedowns. But one thing I did notice about him specifically is that he does keep his hands down. And that could be due to cardio. I noticed quite a few fights that he was in. He kind of loses his pace maybe 3 or 4 minutes into the fight, and that's not gonna turn out too well. Definitely, I think ultimately size is gonna play the factor here. I think that Nchukwi has the better boxing, the better stand up. I think it's a question of, can Nchukwi hurt Pickett? That's really what it's going to come down to. But I do think Nchukwi is just the better boxer of these two, and I don't think Pickett is really going to have a game plan to deal with that. So I'm pretty comfortable in picking Nchukwi on this one.
Yeah, this is a good matchup here. One thing you got to look at, Jamie Pickett. He's a big boy, 6'2", so he's gonna be a big guy, 185. He's a big 185er. Tafon, as you mentioned, he was a light heavyweight. He was actually a heavyweight as well. So he's fought at heavyweight, fought at light heavyweight. Now he's going down to middleweight. So he's able to deal with the size. Now the question is, how is Tafon going to look at this weight class? Because now he's really going down. We've seen guys look really good when they go down. We've seen guys look really bad when they go down, right? So that is a concern. But one thing I like about Tafon is that he has a big win. To me, he has a big winning on his record. William Knight, who right now in the UFC. William Knight is on a 3-fight winning streak, 1 fight on the Contender Series, and then he beat Alexa Kamor, a prospect at UFC 253. So that's a big win that he got. And he's knocking these guys out. When these guys, like from amateur to pro, everybody that fights him, when they get hit, they go down, right? So the concern I have is on the Contender Series, he was having a tough time with Al Mataveo. And then he knocked him on the second round. So the first round was a really close round, and then he got the knockout. So this fight is a hard fight. I think Jamie Pickett is definitely a live underdog. But I have to go with Tafon. I think that he's gonna back him up. He has a far better stand up, and I've seen Tafon stuff takedowns. I've seen people try to get him on the ground, and I've seen him stuff takedowns and knock people out. So, and as Harris mentioned, Jamie Pickett leaves his hands down. So I think that a lot of this fight's going to be in the stand-up area, and I think that's where Tafon really can. Again, I'm not confident, but I think Tafon's going to eventually get the kill shot. Even though Pickett has never been knocked out, I think there's a first for everything, right? So yeah, I'm going to go with Tafon Nchukwi by knockout.
I agree with that. I definitely agree with that. Definitely to win the fight, and more than likely by knockout as well. So let's move on then to the next fight. We have Deron Winn versus Antônio Arroyo. Definitely a fight that I want to avoid betting on. How do you feel about this fight, and what do you think is going to happen in this one?
Yeah, this is a really tough fight because one thing we know about Deron Winn is that he hangs out with Cormier, trains with Cormier. He's pretty much a miniature Cormier, but he hasn't been looking good in his last couple performances. He lost to Gerald Mearshart. He was losing the whole fight, that eventually got choked out. And then, he got beat by Darren Stewart. It was a split decision, but I think that was a fair decision. He beat Eric Spicely, Tom Lawler, Ahmed White. So really, if you look at his record, whenever he steps up and faces anybody, he gets handled, right? So I think he has a path to victory here. I think he's a far better wrestler. Antonio Arroyo is not good with the takedown defense, and he gives up a lot of takedowns. I think Deron Winn can definitely win this fight by taking Arroyo down. But what Deron Winn has shown me in his fights is that when he fought Mearshart and Darren Stewart, he had the much better wrestling, and all he had to do was take these guys down and ride the rounds out. But it seemed like he didn't have the cardio. So this fight's at a catch weight, I think 195.
Yep.
I'm not sure who won. Yeah, I'm not sure who wanted this catch weight. Antonio Arroyo's game, not. He's not. He doesn't have good takedown defense. He gives up takedowns. However, on the feet, he's dangerous. He has very good front kicks, low kicks, punch. He has very good boxing, like a big advantage. And plus, he's almost a foot taller than Deron Winn, right? Deron Winn's 5'6". Antonio Arroyo, I believe he's 6'3", 6'3", 6'4". So he's facing one of the taller middleweights, almost a foot taller. I don't feel comfortable in this fight because both guys have a legit path to win this fight. Deron Winn can easily wrestle this, but he's shown me cardio issues. But if he's fixed that, he can easily get that done that way. And he's with the right training team. But Antonio Arroyo, I'm going to take here. I'm going to pick Arroyo because I think that if he does get him down and Arroyo survives, I believe that Winn's going to really gas and he's not going to really go for the takedowns further. And I think at that point, Arroyo is going to piece him up. I think the stand-up there's a big disparity in the stand-up, just like the ground, just like the wrestling. That's why this fight I wouldn't bet on this fight because Winn has such a big advantage with the grappling. But then Arroyo has such a big advantage with the striking and the height. But I'm going to go with Arroyo. Winn has shown me, Deron Winn has shown me a little quit in him. The fights he could have taken to the ground, he's not doing it. Maybe he can't do it because of his cardio. He's not in the best shape. So I'm going to go with Arroyo to survive a first round and then come out and piece him up. Or survive an early fight and then piece him up after Winn gets a bit tired.
Yeah, I agree with every single point that you made there with Deron Winn. Cardio, heart, that definitely plays a factor. I think another thing that will play a factor in this fight is the fact that it is at catch weight. We're asking ourselves, is this helping Deron Winn or is it because he's maybe not in shape? And that could speak to the cardio as well. I think we see this script 100 times when both fighters have a path to victory, when one person's dominant on the ground, when the other person's dominant on the stand-up. And when cardio is a factor, we normally see that wrestler take round one. And we normally see the person that's better in the stand-up take rounds 2 and 3. And I can very much see that happening here. I'm going to agree with your pick there, Antonio Arroyo. I just can't trust Deron Winn. I think he has a path. I think it's very winnable for him. So beware of that in terms of, as a listener, who you want to go with in this fight. But I just can't put my trust in Deron Winn at this point. So I'm going to pick a very hesitant Antonio Arroyo as the winner of this fight. Let's move on to our next fight in that case. We have Karl Roberson, sorry about that, versus Dalcha Lungiambula. So this is a pretty good middleweight fight here. Roberson, of course, we know he's a southpaw. We know he has high-level striking. We know he has good boxing, good kickboxing. We know that he comes from a kickboxing background. One thing I really like about Karl Roberson is that he stays pretty calm, stays pretty controlled on the feet, kind of keeps his pace going. And of course, that allows him to sort of maintain that for the entire round in a lot of ways, right? When I think about Lungiambula, I mean, his boxing is pretty stiff by comparison. He'll definitely try to clinch you against the cage. He does have a judo background, so that's something to keep in mind when it comes to any sort of takedown defense or his overall balance in the ring or his ability to clinch you and possibly get you on the ground there. That said, he doesn't have a wrestling background, so just be aware of that. He will show some wrestling at times, but it's not like he's a specialist in any way, shape, or form. He does sort of burst and kind of throw everything into everything, whether it's a single punch, whether it's a combination. He will definitely throw his all into it, so you do have to be very weary of his power. But I just feel like he's a bit stiff, especially in the shoulders. I feel like he's also a hesitant striker. He's not somebody that sort of creates the pressure, but rather he's somebody that's going to sort of look for that one explosive opportunity to catch you. I think if you watch his last fight versus Ankalaev, or watch his fight versus Ankalaev, I should say, I think that's going to be a perfect blueprint for this fight. Ankalaev, he was faster. Ankalaev was better. He was the more complete striker. He took on Lungiambula's power, and that's obviously the key X factor there with Karl Roberson is, can he take on that power? And also, Ankalaev was also getting out of the way of his power more times than not. I think Lungiambula, going back to his power, I think he really only has a puncher's chance. But at the same time, we saw what he was able to do to someone who he had a clear wrestling advantage on, or a clear ground advantage on. So if he feels he has that, I can see him technically having a path to victory. But in a realistic scenario, I just don't see that happening. I see this fight for the most part staying on the feet. I think Karl Roberson is just the better striker, the more complete striker, the more advanced striker. And although beware of Dalcha's power, I do have Karl Roberson winning a pretty comfortable victory here. What were your thoughts on this fight?
Yeah, this is sorry about that. I had little technical issues, but yeah, this is a really tough fight. This is we got Dalcha, so he does have grappling. He took down what did he fight? He took down like Daquan Townsend.
Yeah.
He does his UFC debut. Took him down 4 times, right? So he definitely could take Roberson to the ground. In this fight, he does have the wrestling edge in this fight. But I give Roberson a clear striking edge. I'm not sure when I've seen Roberson lose a fight when it comes down to striking. I believe whenever he loses, they have to grapple. Cesar Ferreira, Glover Teixeira, and Marvin Vettori. So all these guys have to grapple him. They couldn't really. So I agree that this fight is going to be a lot of stand-up, and I think that's where Roberson's going to shine here. The far better striker, very clean, one of the best strikers in the division. And I don't think Dalcha has the grappling that Vettori has, Teixeira has, and Ferreira have to cause the problems that they caused against Roberson. So I'm gonna echo you. I'm gonna take Roberson on this fight. I think he's gonna win. I think he can get a knockout. I don't think Dalcha's striking defense is the greatest, so I think he can get a finish in this fight.
Yeah, I can definitely see that as being sort of a prop pick for sure. But yeah, for sure, Karl Roberson on the win. I think that's pretty comfortable. And again, I agree with your point. I don't think Dalcha is the takedown artist that, say, a Vettori is to nullify Roberson's stand-up game. So I just see that being too much of a discrepancy there. So let's now move on to fight number 6. We have Sijara Eubanks versus Pannie Kianzad. Let's kind of analyze these fighters here. We think about Kianzad. I mean, pretty solid stand-up, solid boxing. She keeps range. I like how she mixes in the kicks in her attack. She really likes to hook. That's one thing that we're gonna really keep an eye on in this fight, is she likes to throw that hook, whether she's the counterpuncher in that scenario or whether she is at distance and needs to close that distance before she sets something else up. I do like her takedown defense. I do like her tie clinches, whether it leads to dirty boxing, whether it leads to tie clinch with knees. I like her ability to add that layer to her game, or have that layer in her game, I should say. And when we think about Sijara Eubanks, I mean, a little bit of everything. She's one of those fighters that don't particularly have a weakness, but also doesn't do any one thing particularly well, so to speak, or particularly amazing. I do like her boxing ability. I think she has a striking style where she is willing to engage. She is willing to trade shots. Again, that's something that we want to be aware of in this fight, as to whether or not this happens, this fight, I should say, happens at range, or this fight happens close. I think that will be a factor. And one thing with Eubanks as well is that she does like to throw that front low kick often, more of a point scorer rather than anything to hurt the opponent. She does like to play that role of counterpuncher as well pretty often. So that's going to be interesting to see what happens with two counterpunchers here. And I mean, the thing with Eubanks, of course, the one gripe on her is that her cardio. Her cardio has been an issue in the past. I don't feel like she really has that extra gear, especially once that cardio really starts to become a factor. And in terms of how I see this fight going, I mean, it's interesting. I think in some ways we already kind of mentioned the script with Deron Winn versus Antônio Arroyo, and not from a style perspective, but more so from a cardio perspective. So what I see happening here is I wouldn't be surprised if Eubanks is arguably winning round one, maybe winning parts of round two. But then I see cardio playing a factor here. Kianzad really kind of keeps that same pace for the entire fight. I see Kianzad winning round two. I see Kianzad winning round three. And then at that point, I see her getting a unanimous decision, 29-28. I think it's going to be one of those type of fights. I don't see either fighter particularly hurting the other fighter. So I'm pretty solid on Pannie Kianzad via decision here.
Yeah. This is a really hard fight. This is a fight that I was going back and forth on, because on one side we got Eubanks, who has a clear path to victory. With a lot of these girls in this division, she if she has the strength advantage, she just gets them to the ground and she's able to ride out these rounds with top position. Her ground game is underrated, but with the strength that she has, she's very physical. So she's able to get these girls on the ground and just smother them like a blanket and win these rounds. Now on the next side, we got Pansy Kianzad, who has a 92% takedown defense. Sijara Eubanks takedown percentage, let me get that for y'all. She has a 46% takedown average. So she's pretty good on takedowns. She's almost 50%. But Pannie has a 92% takedown defense. And she's fought Beth Carrera. She's fought Jessica Rose Clark, Julia Villa, Macy Chasen. So she's fought some grapplers, and the only one that's been able to get her on the ground have been Beth Carrera, right? So you gotta look at this fight. It's gonna be a hard fight to pick, because we know Sijara Eubanks has okay stand up. She has good wins on her record. She has that physical, that strength where she can just get these fighters down and hold them there for two out of three rounds. But I'm going to echo. I'm going to go with Pannie. I think that with that 92% takedown defense, I think she has a strong advantage in the stand-up area. Good 1-2s, good kicks. Very well-rounded fighter. Very well-rounded fighter. So I find Eubanks is a bit one-dimensional in terms of trying to get this to the ground and just using her physical advantages over these other females. But I think that Pannie is big enough to keep it standing enough to get a clear decision here. I got Pannie to win this fight by decision.
Agreed. Let's move on into our final fight of our prelims here. Of course, UFC Fight Night Thompson versus Neal. Final fight of our prelims. A little bit of schedule shifting around here, but we've landed upon Anthony Pettis versus Alex Morono. Tell me what you think about this fight.
Oh yeah, this is a really, really tricky fight, because obviously Pettis, he's getting older, so he's definitely a bit fragile. I think he's gonna have the stand-up advantage. I believe so. I think Morono, a scrappy fighter, but he's not as tight with his striking as Pettis. Morono, though, I believe has the wrestling advantage. I believe he's gonna have the size, the strength advantage in this fight. I believe there's a clear path for Morono to win this fight, whether it be utilizing some takedowns or just getting really physical with Pettis, because again, Pettis is getting old, and I was never a big fan of Pettis. I like his style. I respect his game. But he's shown me he's a bit fragile in some of these fights. So I like Pettis. I'm going to go with Pettis to win this fight reluctantly because I believe that Morono is a live underdog. But I saw an interview with Pettis the other day. He looked in good spirit. He looked like he was ready, like nothing was phasing him. So if Pettis comes in and does what Pettis does, if the Pettis that beats Cerrone comes in, he should win this fight because even though he's not as active of a striker, only 3 strikes landed per minute versus 5 for Morono. He's more accurate, so he'll get the more telling shots in the judge's eyes. It may be I believe this is gonna be a close fight. I believe this is gonna be closer than the odds indicate, but I'm gonna go with I'm gonna take Anthony Pettis here to win I'm gonna take Anthony Pettis to win this fight.
Yeah, I agree. And to your point, I mean, he very good counterpuncher, right? And I think that's the thing with Pettis is that he moves around the ring so well, and he looks to counterpunch. He looks to kind of time it, strike, hit you, get out the way. That of course it is going to bring down some of those striking numbers, but to your point, it is the more telling shots. And the thing that I noticed about Morono, especially in his stand-up, is that when he does get hit, he does leave himself a little bit open, whether that is sort of reacting in kind of a shocked way, or whether that's allowing your opponent to hit you 2 or 3 more times after you get hit that first time. So, even with the fight being close, I think Pettis' strikes are going to be the strikes that look to be more effective, whether they actually are or not. And another thing I noticed about Morono as well, cardio might be an issue from what I've seen from his fights, right? And to your point, Morono has a clear path. And in fact, in addition to Morono's path, we know that Pettis can be beaten if you clinch him a lot, if you dirty box him a lot, if you take the fight to the ground. Morono can do those things to Pettis. But if this fight remains on the feet, Pettis is usually at the advantage, or at least has a good shot of winning the match in those different situations. And I just think it's going to be a matter of too much movement for Morono. I think Morono is going to maybe tire out kind of chasing Pettis around the ring. And I think Pettis is going to land the snappier shots, the shots that look better in the eyes of the judges for sure. I'm not as hesitant in my pick, but I do understand the cautions for picking Pettis on this fight. But I'm also going to agree with you. I'm going to go with Anthony Pettis as well. So that will take us to the end of the prelims in that case. Let's take a look at what's going on in Vegas. Unfortunately, we don't have that first fight there yet, the Carlton minus fight. It's still showing the old results versus Rick Glenn. So outside of that fight, what fights do we like here on this prelim card?
So I like on this prelim, I'm confident with Christos Giagos to beat Carlton minus. I don't know what those odds are.
Agreed.
I like Karl Roberson to beat Dalcha. I like Karl Roberson to beat Dalcha Lungiambula. We're talking prelim, and yeah, that's what I like right here.
Okay. For myself, I mean, I'm gonna echo the Karl Roberson pick. I'm also going to, yeah, you know what? I'm gonna leave it at that in terms of kind of some solid picks. I think a good underdog to take a look at specifically on this preliminary card is Pannie Kianzad. $100 will get you $137 of profit there. To me, she seems like the better fighter, or the fighter that's maybe more equipped to win, based on what we assume Sijara Eubanks to be from a cardio perspective and kind of from a one-dimensional perspective. So I can see an underdog pick there with Pannie Kianzad. But to your point, I mean, let's see what happens with the odds of that Carlton minus fight. Obviously, he's not fighting Rick Glenn, as is mentioned here. In addition to that, Karl Roberson, definitely a pretty solid pick. $100 there is going to get you a $40 profit, but he should win that one. So let's wrap up the prelims at that point. Stay tuned for our main card video, and let's make this money.
All right, peace.